What would you do if the microphone was already on? The red light was flashing, and everyone was listening, but your mouth refused to speak? What if your one chance to show yourself arrived, but your voice disappeared? My name is Emily. I am 24 years old, and I work in a small radio station in the north of England. I live in a quiet town near the hills, where the streets are full of cafes, bicycles, and the sound of rain on windows. Most people here know each other. Life is simple, but that does not mean it is easy. Before we go deeper into the story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Leave a comment below and tell me about your country. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a like. I make these stories to help you grow your English and your confidence. I always worked behind the microphone, not in front of it. I was the one who checked the volume, edited the music, and made sure the live shows started on time. I was not a speaker. I did not want the spotlight. I liked being in the background. I thought it was safer there. But everything changed one rainy Wednesday morning. That day, I arrived at the station early as usual. The wind was strong and my coat was wet. I took off my scarf and went to the control room. The show was supposed to begin in 20 minutes. The morning presenter, Mark, had a simple job. He read the weather, played 2 songs, and told a short news story in English. It was our Morning Easy English segment. Many people who were learning English listened to it every day, but something was wrong. Mark had not arrived. I checked the time again, still no message. I called him. No answer. Then my manager, Claire, walked into the room. "Emily," she said, "Mark is stuck in traffic. There's been an accident on the road. He can't come. I need you to read the news story this morning." I laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" "I'm not. You're the only person here who can do it. But I don't speak on air. I'm not ready. You don't have to be perfect. Just speak slowly. The listeners are learners, remember. You can do it." I looked at the paper in her hand. The story was about a new library opening in the town. It was short and simple, but to me, it looked like a mountain I could not climb. I had learned English in school. I understood it well. I could write it, read it, and listen to it. But speaking real speaking, living with people, listening was different. That was scary. Claire placed the paper on the desk and walked out. "The mic goes live in 3 minutes," she said. I sat in the chair, put on the headphones, and stared at the microphone. My heart was racing. My hands were cold. The red light on the wall started flashing. That meant we were almost live. I could hear the last song ending in my ears. 10 seconds left, then 5, then 3, and then silence. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I looked at the paper. I knew the words, but my tongue felt heavy. My mind went completely blank. The red light stayed on. The air was live. Thousands of people were listening, but I said nothing. 10 seconds passed, then 20. Finally, with shaking fingers, I reached for the music button and played another song. I turned off the mic and sat back in the chair. The show was broken. Because of me. I stayed in that chair for a long time. I couldn't move. My face felt hot. My eyes were full of tears. I had one job to read a short news story, and I failed. I wanted to run away and never come back. That afternoon, I went home early. I told Claire I felt sick. She didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "Take some rest. At home, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My room was quiet, but my mind was loud. Thoughts were running in every direction. Why did I freeze? Why couldn't I speak? What was wrong with me? Then I remembered something. In school, when the teacher asked questions in English, I always looked down. I was afraid of saying something wrong. At parties, if someone spoke to me in English, I would smile and nod, but never say much. I was always waiting for the perfect time to speak, when I felt confident, when I knew all the words, when I could speak without mistakes. But maybe that perfect time was never coming. That evening, I sat at my desk, took out a notebook, and wrote one sentence on the first page. I want to find my voice. I didn't want to feel this fear anymore. I didn't want to stay silent forever. I knew I had to change, not in one day, but step by step. So I started small. The next morning, I woke up, looked around my room, and started speaking. I said, "This is my window. It is gray outside. I see rain. I feel cold." Then I went to the kitchen and said, "I am making tea. The water is hot. I like this smell." I spoke to myself about everything I could see, hear, or feel. I didn't care about grammar. I didn't care about mistakes. I just wanted to speak. Later, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced saying, "Good morning. Welcome to Easy English. My name is Emily." I said it 10 times, then 20. Every day, I spoke a little more. I watched short videos in English and paused after each sentence. I repeated what I heard, trying to match the voice and feeling. It was strange at first, but also exciting. My mouth was learning how to move in a new way. My brain was learning not to be afraid. After 1 week, I noticed something. I was no longer translating in my head. When I saw a cup, I thought cup, not the word in my native language. When I heard someone speaking English on the bus, I didn't panic. I understood the meaning, even if I didn't catch every word. I started to enjoy the process. I recorded myself speaking for 5 minutes every evening. I talked about my day, my thoughts, my plans. When I listened to the recordings, I heard progress. I was still slow. My voice still shook sometimes, but I was speaking. Then, 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Mark was late again. This time, Claire came in with the same look on her face, but before she said anything, I stood up. "I'll do it," I said. The next few days felt like a dream I could not wake up from. After the silence in the studio, I wanted to disappear. I kept thinking about the moment when my voice failed me. My producer, Helen, had been kind. She said I needed rest and time, but I knew the truth. I had frozen during a live radio broadcast. That kind of mistake is not easy to forget, especially when you are the host. I stayed home that week. I ignored messages. I turned off my phone. My little flat felt smaller than ever, like the walls were closing in on me. I drank tea I did not want and stared at the ceiling for hours. I replayed the silence again and again in my head. I imagined the listeners waiting for words that never came. I felt shame grow inside me like a storm. I thought about quitting. Maybe I was not made for this. Maybe I should go back to working in the cafe, where I did not need to speak to hundreds of people at once. But something inside me said no. I was not ready to give up. It happened on a Thursday evening. I had not eaten all day. I walked to the local store just to get out of the house. As I waited in line with a bag of rice and 2 apples. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned and saw a girl, maybe 12 years old, looking up at me with wide eyes. Her mother stood behind her, smiling. "Are you the girl from the radio?" the girl asked shyly. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Then I nodded. "I listen every week," she said. "Your voice helps me sleep when I'm scared." I stared at her, feeling my throat close again. I forced a smile and whispered, "Thank you." That small moment changed something in me. I walked home slowly, the bag heavy in my arms, my eyes filled with tears. Maybe I had failed once, maybe I would fail again. But someone out there had listened. Someone had found comfort in my voice. I owed it to her, and maybe to myself, to try again. The next morning, I sent Helen a message. "I want to come back," I wrote. She replied within minutes. "Come in Monday. We'll take it slow." That weekend, I made a plan. I would not return the same. I needed to rebuild my voice from the inside. It was not about grammar or words. It was about trust. I needed to trust myself again. I remembered something my grandmother once told me. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is speaking even when fear is loud. So I started with the smallest thing. I spoke out loud to my mirror. I stood in front of it every morning, brushing my hair, and said, "You are not broken. You are healing." I said it again and again until it felt true. Then I made recordings. I read short paragraphs from books. I listened back, not to judge, but to understand. Where did my voice shake? Where did I feel strong? I made notes. I kept going. On Monday, I returned to the studio. I wore my favorite blue shirt. It was soft and familiar. When I entered the building, I saw Helen waiting. She gave me a smile, not too big, just enough to make me feel welcome. "You don't have to go live," she said. "We can record first. Get you back in slowly." I nodded, thankful. I sat in the recording room with the mic in front of me. It looked the same, but I felt different. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The red light came on. I began to speak. "Good morning, this is Lily. Thank you for joining me today." My voice was softer than usual, but steady. I read the lines slowly, keeping my breathing calm. After 10 minutes, Helen gave me a thumbs up. We listened back together. It was not perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. For the next few weeks, we did pre-recorded shows. I spoke about small things, books, weather, memories. Listeners started sending messages again. "Nice to hear your voice," one said. "We missed you," said another. Each kind message felt like a step forward. I still had fear, but it no longer controlled me. Then one day, Helen said, "You're ready for live again?" I nodded. My heart beat faster, but I did not argue. I went home that night and sat by the window. The city lights flickered below. I closed my eyes and imagined myself speaking. I pictured the words flowing, not perfect, but honest. The morning of the live show, I arrived early. I made tea. I warmed up my voice by humming softly. Then I sat in the chair, mic in front of me, headphones on. Helen gave me a nod. "Going live in 3, 2, 1. The red light turned on. My heart raced, but I opened my mouth. What would you do if your biggest fear came true? And you had to face it again? I paused. This morning, I want to talk about second chances. I kept going. I shared my story, not everything, but enough. I told listeners about fear, about freezing, about finding the strength to try again. My hands shook at first, but after 5 minutes, they were calm. My voice grew stronger with each sentence. After the show, Helen came into the room. She said nothing. She just hugged me. I walked home with a light heart. The sky was gray, and it might have rained later, but I felt like the sun was shining. Something inside me had changed. I no longer waited to feel ready. I acted even when afraid, and the listeners heard it. The next week, I got more messages than ever. One woman wrote, "You helped me get through my divorce." A man shared, "I listen to you on my way to work. You make me feel less alone." But there was one message that stayed with me. It was from a boy named Tom, age 15. "I used to be scared to speak in class," he wrote, "but now I say one sentence every day, because if you can speak again, maybe I can too." I read that message over and over. It reminded me why I started. Not for fame, not for perfection, but for connection. The mic had once scared me. Now it felt like home. I knew the journey wasn't over. There would still be hard days, but I had walked through silence and come out stronger. The studio did fall silent once, but not anymore. Now it holds my voice, my real voice, the one I fought for, and I am not giving it up. I stayed in the bathroom for a long time, just holding the edge of the sink and staring at my own reflection. I had cried, but it did not help. My head felt heavy, and my heart was beating fast. I felt like I was floating, not really inside my own body. Maybe this was what it felt like to be broken quietly from the inside out. I did not return to the studio that night. I waited until everyone had gone home. Then I went back to get my bag and my things. The lights were off and the place felt cold, as if my presence had never mattered there. As I stood in that empty room, I remembered the first time I walked in. I had been full of dreams. I had believed I belonged here, but now I felt like a stranger. The next morning, I wrote a message to the director and said I needed some time off. I did not explain why. I simply said I was not feeling well and would be away for a few days. He replied quickly and said he hoped I felt better soon. I could hear his politeness through the words. He did not ask questions. Maybe he already knew what had happened, or maybe he just did not care. I spent the next few days at home, staying mostly in bed. I did not speak to anyone. I turned off my phone. I watched the walls and tried to quiet the noise in my head, but it never really stopped. I kept replaying the moment when the studio fell silent. That single second had changed everything. I had finally said the words I was holding in for so long. And yet, I had never felt so alone. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I did not move at first. I thought it might be the landlord or someone delivering something. But then I heard a voice. It was Sam. "Claire, are you there?" "It's me." I opened the door slowly. Sam was standing there with a small bag of food and a worried look on his face. He did not try to smile. He just looked at me and said, "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. We sat on the floor of my small kitchen. He gave me a sandwich and some tea. I had not eaten properly in days. We did not speak much at first. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Claire." "About what happened? You did not deserve that." I did not know what to say. So I asked, "Why didn't anyone say anything? Why did you all stay quiet?" Sam looked down. "We were shocked. No one expected you to speak like that. And honestly, I think we were afraid. Afraid of breaking the image we had. of what it might mean if you were right. That made sense, but it still hurt. So it was easier to say nothing? Yes, he said quietly. But it wasn't right. We talked for a while. I told him how I had felt for months, about how I had been pushing myself, hoping someone would notice, hoping I mattered. Sam listened. He did not try to fix it. He just let me speak, and somehow that helped more than anything else. Later that evening, after he left, I sat by the window and watched the lights outside. Something had changed inside me. I was still hurt, still confused, but I was no longer frozen. I had spoken my truth. Even if it had brought silence, even if it had pushed people away, I had still done it. And now I had to decide what to do next. The next week, I received a message from one of the assistant producers. Her name was Anna. She had always been kind but quiet. She said she had heard what happened and wanted to talk. She invited me to a small cafe near the studio. When I arrived, she was already waiting. She smiled when she saw me and stood up to give me a hug. It felt strange, but also comforting. We sat down and she ordered us some coffee. "I've wanted to say something for a long time," she began. "I saw how hard you worked. You were always the first one in and the last to leave. But no one ever said thank you." I looked at her, surprised. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I was afraid before," she said. "Afraid of standing out, of getting in trouble. But after what you said in the studio, something changed. People are talking now, quietly, but it's happening. You made something move." Her words touched me deeply. I had thought my voice had fallen into silence, but maybe, somewhere, it had created a small echo. That week, I also received a message from the director. He asked to meet. I agreed, but with hesitation. We met in a quiet corner of the studio where no one else was around. He seemed different, a little tired, maybe thoughtful. "I want to apologize," he said. "I didn't handle things well. I was too focused on the final product and not enough on the people, especially you." I didn't respond right away. I needed to be sure I believed him. He continued, "You don't have to return if you're not ready, but if you do, I promise it will be different. We've already started changing how we do things. I want you to be part of that, if you still want to be." I left that meeting with mixed feelings. Part of me wanted to return, to help build something better. But another part of me felt tired. I had given so much, and I was not sure I had the strength to go back. I took another week to think. I spoke to Sam again. I met with Anna a few more times. I also spent time alone, walking in the park, listening to music, writing in my notebook. I asked myself what I wanted now, not what others expected, not what I had planned months ago, but what I truly wanted. In the end, I decided not to return to the studio full-time, but I agreed to work on one final project, something smaller, something that felt true. I told the director I would only do it if I had full creative control, and if the team worked with openness and respect. He agreed. So I began again, but in a new way. This time, I brought my full self to the work. I shared my thoughts. I spoke when something felt wrong. I encouraged others to do the same. And slowly, the atmosphere began to change. There was more laughter, more honesty. The silence was no longer something we feared. It became a space where real voices could grow. The final show we created was not perfect, but it was full of feeling. When it aired, we received many kind messages. Some people said they felt seen for the first time. Others said they cried while watching, One person wrote, "This story touched something deep inside me." Thank you. As I read that message, I smiled, because in that moment, I knew I had found something real. Not fame, not praise, but meaning. Now when I walk past the studio, I no longer feel pain. I feel proud. I remember the day the studio fell silent, but I also remember the days that followed. The quiet conversations, the small acts of courage, the voices that began to rise again. And most of all, I remember that girl who once stood in the middle of the room and spoke, even when it hurt. She found her voice, and she never lost it again.